Hello there. Welcome to the Fixing Football podcast. Now, you'll have already noticed I'm not Martin, which means that this podcast quality is going to dip because, unfortunately, as I am Liam, that means I can't ask Liam questions for Liam's answers. So apologies in advance that you're not going to get Liam answering questions about it. So we're joined today by both Luke and Scott. Scott, how are you doing?
I am wonderful. I'm back after a short hiatus due to a house move. I am now moved. I'm now settled. I'm ready to get back to my hard-hitting journalism.
Oh yeah, I did notice a different background there. Very clean wall. Is it newly painted? That
it is. It is now my makeshift podcast studio. As Martin will tell us, our backgrounds need to be good. So I have heeded his call and I've fixed it up.
He does do that, but he's often sat on the floor in his front room with a sofa behind him, and it says that that's better somehow than the one I use for work every single day, which is fine. But anyway, Martin isn't here, so we might be able to get some fair opinions out of everyone today. Luke, how are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. I'm excited for this podcast to see how it goes.
Why?
I'm backing you. I'm backing
you're backing
you, Liam.
The Liam host. You've been an advocate of this for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, don't let me down.
I can't promise that, Luke. I can't promise that. And I also can't promise that this isn't the episode where we finally get cancelled. So, speaking of which, episode 81, Martin would like me to point out. So, Martin has written me a list, everyone. So, I know. So, I will stick to some of it, but maybe not all of it, because it seems the word Arsenal is written about 500 times here. So, you know, between the words Arsenal, I will find another structure of what a podcast is supposed to be. But Martin would be particularly annoyed with me if I didn't mention the competition that we're currently doing. Luke, tell us about the competition and what our listeners could potentially win.
Martin has decided to give away some memorabilia of David Beckham, which when he used to play for Real Madrid.
Yes.
And I think you can win it by either subscribing to the YouTube or whatever other platforms we have for the FFP.
Yeah, I mean, that's close. That's close enough. You can check how to enter in the episode description, or you can see our pinned tweet on X. And I think there's quite about 1 million posts on it that Martin's done on Instagram as well, so you can see them there. It is the number 23 iconic Real Madrid David Beckham shirt. And Martin's dream is to get to 1,000 subscribers by Christmas. I think that is ambitious. You have got every chance of winning if you do enter. So I would enter if I was you.
Would you give that away, Liam? If well, maybe not you, Liam. Maybe Scott. Probably better directed to you. Was that something that you'd give away?
I don't know. It's a cool piece of memorabilia, isn't it? It's like a proper Galacticos era bit of kit. That. So yeah, I don't know. I'd be very attached to it, but see where he's going with it. He's fully dedicated to the cause of leaving behind his regular life and becoming a podcast football journalist host, whatever it is that he wants to do. So, you know what? I respect it. I respect the dedication.
But he can't turn up to his own podcast. Interesting.
No.
Yes.
Disgrace.
Are you familiar with the term standing on the shoulders of giants? I think that's what Martin's been trying to do for some time with me, but that's fine. We can move on. You will be listening and editing this, probably already raging by its content. So I've got written down here, Scott, you mentioned a new segment if you want to mention it. Do you want to mention it, Scott?
Yes, I will mention it. We'll be starting as of next week, but we're going to be launching a new segment where we look at the previous game week's winners and losers, or the stars and stinkers, as I like to term them. So we're going to be taking a look at who's had a great weekend and who's had an absolute shocker. And we're going to be picking apart the weird and wonderful things that go on in the Premier League, who's really shown up and turned up for the team and who has let the side down. So I'm sure there'll be various rotating faces. Most of them will probably be employed by Manchester United in the stinkers column, in the stars column. God knows. Probably Brentford, because they're killing it at the moment. So yeah, that's to come in next week's episode.
Yeah, they are. Thomas Frank particularly doing well this year, considering they sold Ivan Toney. Not really touched on Brentford, and nor will we, because that won't get us more listeners. So let's have a look what else we've got here. So Martin's written that the best way to structure this is 2 20-minute segments, which I already knew that, so I don't know why I'm saying that out loud. And has also, for some reason, written don't forget midweek games from last week. Don't just focus on the weekend. So I can't think why he's written that. But it might be something to do with the Arsenal's performance over the weekend and coming unstuck against a lot of their players they deem not good enough away at Fulham. Terrible result for them. We won't dwell on it too long because Martin isn't here. But yeah, they were awful, I thought, Arsenal in that game. But it's not what Arteta thought afterwards when he said they controlled most parts of the game, which I don't know what he means by that because they didn't. They only looked dangerous from set pieces, which, you know, they don't seem to see as a criticism now, but it is. We've seen 2 Arsenal games this week, Luke. One was that game at the weekend, and the other was a victory against your beloved Manchester United. So do you want to start by touching base on how you think Arsenal got on this week, and then do you want to segue into your own circus of a club after that?
Yeah, so question for you both then. I suppose, are Arsenal becoming a one-trick pony? And then we'll probably segue into the midweek game from that question.
Scott, please. Yeah.
Yes and no. So I think they are capable of doing much more. They've hit on something that is clearly working for them. And it's almost becoming a bit of a weird myth in and of itself, like the whole, when Arsenal get a corner, it's a bit like whenever you used to see David Beckham step up for a free kick in a good position, you'd almost be like, goalie. Like it would sort of be that thing. And I feel like this whole like media spin of this piece coach and how Arsenal have somehow invented the corner kick this year. It's sort of like, I feel like it might almost be getting in teams' heads before it even happens. But I do find it strange that, yeah, like you said, Liam, Arteta was talking about how no team has done what they did, Craven Cottage, to Fulham when they got smashed by Wolves 4-0 the other day, I think it was. So very, very, very strange comments from him as usual. But are they becoming a one-trick pony? It certainly looks that way. They've not scored many goals from open play in the last 5 or 6 games. So they're not doing anything to dispel the rumours.
Yeah, they need to do some other tricks to dispel that. I do think a lot of the players have become less effective, I think. We've talked about Martinelli, so I won't keep banging that drum, but when you bring it on Gabriel Jesus off the bench, I think that ultimately shows you where Arsenal's weakness is. It's something that we talked about quite a lot. They don't have a really strong option as a number 9. And I think it's really starting to show. Whereas City only have a number 9, Arsenal don't have one. So that is really holding them back, in my view, Luke. But please, tell us about Man United's week. But Luke, bear in mind, obviously, the fallout from your result we'll probably touch on later. So tell us about the actual football first.
Okay, sure. So let's touch on the Arsenal result. 2-0 to the Arsenal. I think we're not going to compete at Arsenal's and the Cities and Liverpool's of this world. I think we're still, well, you can see by the performance, we're still not there. I think what Ruben's formation is very clear with this 3-5-5-2 or 3-5-1-1 or something like that. It's I can see what he's trying to do. It just comes down to, do we have the players that technically can play in that position, which is worrying because we're going to have a stage now where a lot of performances or a lot of results just not going to go our way, and we're going to probably maybe even go further down the league. I suppose that's the most worrying part, because you'll get the overreactions from the fan base and the media to say, like what Liam was texting in the group, how it was laughable or whatever adjective he was using. It's I'm not too worried at this point, but I don't want to be at the stage where, like other teams, where we're seeing where a manager puts a style of play in and won't change that style of play and just keep at it, even though the results are going against them. Like your Spurs, your Southamptons, Burnley last year. I can't get behind that. I think you do need to adapt to games, definitely. If it's not working, you need to adapt. I know he wants to try and get this formation in play, but there's got to be times where you need to adapt to the game. I don't know what your two thoughts are on that.
Do you think it's a situation where it sounds crazy, because given that we're 12, 13 games in or whatever it may be, maybe not even that many. It's almost feels to me like the season's a bit of a write-off, and it's almost like this is like an extended Amorim pre-season now, where he's like assessing the landscape, seeing who can fit, who's not good enough, which is mad considering we're only just touching December, but kind of how it feels to me.
You got to remember, he is only 5 games in, remember. So it is going to be elements of
No,
that weight.
No, I think what Scott means is that he's not interested in winning games right now. Like, that's not part of his function. His pure function is to find who's up to his system, and what he's doing is he's almost sacrificing games. Like, for example, in that Nottingham Forest game, what was it? 15 minutes ago, he's taking Bruno Fernandes off. He's taking Højlund off, and I was like, "What are you doing?" But the answer's obvious. It's because he wants to see other players. I mean, why is he subbing De Ligt off for Maguire for no reason?
Yeah,
and it's purely because he wants to have a look at everyone. So I think Scott's right. I think his pure MO at the moment is to see who is up to his system. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. Time will tell, I suppose. You know, I think other managers have done that before. I think Arteta did something similar at Arsenal. That they had quite a long bedding period. I think it was a good couple of years for Arteta to see any kind of return on it. So you're right, Luke. It's only 5 games, but we'll see. I suppose we'll see if this works.
I suppose just touch on the Arsenal game. It wasn't not really much happened. There was the 2 corners, and that was it. It was a pretty dull game. We kind of nullified him in the first half. And second half, did the one-trick pony touch scoring goals off set pieces. Now, yeah, I think the Forest game's a bit more interesting because it really showed a lack of maybe knowledge of how the team's going to play from a Forest point of view. We should have been aware of Chris Wood and kind of getting the balls into him. I think the defence was quite poor as well at the weekend. Like, I think that's when the changes, you saw the changes. Basically all the centre backs got changed out. Lenioro had a bit of a stinker. I think the only highlight I've seen from Ruben's appointment is Bruno stepped up. His numbers are up, and Diallo at right wing back.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's a good player, Luke. We'll leave it there for now because we'll touch on him after the break. But before we do, Scott, the mighty Chelsea in a title race.
Chelsea Blues.
Tell us all about Chelsea. Well, no, not all of us, because you've got about 5 minutes. But give us your best 5 minutes. No, not 5 minutes, because you just talking 5 minutes boring. Just tell us a bit about Chelsea, and I may interject.
So, going very well. There's not really a great deal to complain about at the moment. After an extremely hectic pre-season, every pundit, or most pundits, had us finishing 7th or lower. Nobody knows what they're doing. It's a shambles. The recruitment's all over the show. And now the narrative is grudgingly being turned on its head by results. And like any football team, wins change minds.
Yes. And can I just interject? You've already
please do.
You've already reeled me in with that. Can both things be true? That the recruitment was a bit of a shambles, because it's not like loads of the players you got over the summer are in this team, and also can Maresca have got a tune out of what was there already? Is the narrative that they had a plan all along? Because I'm not quite sure I buy into that as well as things are going.
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, there's an argument there. You throw enough at the wall, something will stick eventually. But there's also a narrative that what we were buying wasn't good either. that was also a part of that narrative, is that we were spending a lot of money and not spending it on what we should have been spending it on. Whereas that is now being proven untrue. I still think there's some work. The goalkeeping recruitment has been a little bit strange. I don't really understand what we've been doing there. I think Maresca's kind of got his hands tied with a keeper on a 6-year deal, and you can't drop him because they need to get rid of him somehow. So you retain the value, but I think there's a bit of a mixture. Maybe could he have got? I'm having seen Maresca work with these players now. If the squad had remained the same, would we have been better? Probably, but I think you are seeing a lot of players from this year and last, and it's all sort of one part of the same recruitment strategy, isn't it? You know, last year we had the likes of Palmer, Sado, Lavia all join. They're all massively key figures in the team now. And as you're going through this year, Pedro Neto been really, really important. Renato Vega's played a really, really strong part in deputising at left back. We've seen Cucurella absolutely step up, which obviously he's from the very first round of transfers. But somewhat maybe, but I do think that we're clearly doing something right, and I think we seem to have the right mix of talent and direction now, or we seem to have struck on at least a bit of a rich vein of form, if nothing else.
Sancho looks like he stepped up recently.
There's another one. Forgetting them all. Jadon Sancho's been excellent since he joined. I think he's clearly playing with something of a bit of a chip on his shoulder in a good way. He's clearly got something to prove to people. He had a lot of question marks over his attitude with how it all ended at United. You know, there was always whose side were you on? Is it Ten Hag's fault? Was it Sancho's fault? And I'm sure the truth is somewhere in the middle. But yeah, against Tottenham yesterday in particular,
I agree.
It was brilliant. That's the Sancho that we saw at Dortmund, I think.
I agree completely. Luke, have you got anything to ask of Scott and the Chelsea revolution?
Yeah, and I asked him a few weeks ago, actually, last time I was on.
Here we go.
It's defence and keeper.
It's a good question.
I still see doubts there, a bit error prone. I don't know what your thoughts are that.
Before you answer this, Scott, this is why I don't think you'll win the league. But please go ahead.
I agree. I completely agree. I think if we do win the league, Jamie Carragher was trying to say it wouldn't be an underdog story. I think it absolutely would be. I think it would be a ridiculous mixture of luck and achievement, luck and the stars aligning. It would be crazy if we were to win the league.
I get what he's saying when he says it's not an underdog story, but I would argue it's a couple of years ahead of the plan.
Yeah,
and I think people talked about that with Arsenal when Arsenal made that big jump, didn't they? They made a jump from like finishing 5th to finishing 2nd, and it was like, this is a year ahead of the plan. I think maybe 2-3 years further down the line than maybe you were planning on being. So I think that in itself is a good result, but ultimately someone's going to try and win the league that's not City at some point, rather than all these 5-year fucking plans that everyone's on. Okay, fair enough. So that's Chelsea boxed off. Anything you want to add before I move on, Scott?
No, I think Luke has a good point on the defence and the goalkeeper. We've got what I would say is a very good centre-back pairing, but a very inexperienced centre-back pairing of Colwill and Fofana. You saw it yesterday. Although Cucurella's getting a lot of shit for his slips, Colwill switched off for that goal. That was more Colwill's fault, I thought, the Solanke goal. I thought he let Solanke get in front. I mean, Solanke's movement was good, but Van Dijk doesn't let that happen, I don't think. I
think that's a little harsh, and that was a good goal, that. But anyway, fair enough. Your defence is your weak point, particularly goalkeeper. I can't believe you've spent the money you've spent, and you've got essentially someone who wasn't getting in Brighton's team ahead of. I think Jason Steele was getting ahead of him. I think that's pretty damning. But anyway, great season for the Chelsea Blues. For those wondering why there's no Bolton update, Bolton didn't play. It was called off. To be fair, it was in Bristol with the red weather warning due to Storm Dara, so I suppose common sense prevailed and all that, but they didn't call it off to about 9 o'clock in the morning. Could have been done ages before the red weather warning was already there, but whatever. Bolton will have a game. Go on, Luke.
Did people travel down and let you know, Liam?
Not that I know. I think you'd be stupid to set off early for that game. Everyone knew it'd be off. There's no way that game was going ahead. So maybe some people keen beans went down the day before, but I think if you did, you were a silly Billy, because that game was never in a million years going to get played. So fair enough. Any silly billies out there? Sorry. So that's Bolton. Really, Bolton is going to be more about next week, because this week we've got, as of tonight, because this is Tuesday, we speak on Tuesdays, we don't record the day before. So tonight I am going to be at Bolton versus Huddersfield in the Virtue Cars Motor Trophy. I think they own Bristol Seat Motors, but for some reason not called it that. They called it Virtue, so whatever. Don't understand that branding, but that's what the cup's called now. It's changed mid-season for the second year in a row, so there we go. We've got that. That's against Huddersfield at home. So, yeah, could do with winning that. They beat us 4-0 at home in the league early in the year, and that was quite a watershed moment where Ian Evatt was under severe pressure, so I think he'll want to get some revenge for that result. And then we approach the big one, the Bolton-Wigan derby on Saturday, 12:30 kickoff.
Tasty one.
It is tasty, and it's particularly important, this one, I think, because it's been so long since we beat them, which Luke likes to get his years out whenever it's Wigan or Blackpool. He likes to quote how many years it's been and all this kind of stuff. They beat us twice 4-0 at home in a row, and they're struggling this season. So we need a result. It doesn't matter where we are. It doesn't matter it almost doesn't matter how this impacts the league. We need to just fucking smash Wigan. Because we owe them one. And for those that don't know that derby, it is not a pleasant derby. It's not a famous one, but it is not a pleasant one either.
It's not a Sunday, is it? Saturday.
Very ill-tempered.
No, it's funny you say that, Luke, because you do have your own derby on Sunday. Yeah. So no, ours is on the Saturday. So it's a busy weekend for Greater Manchester Police. So 2 Category 1 fixtures there. So we'll see how they get. A lot of overtime on offer for the boys in blue at GMP. But yeah, good luck to Bolton, and I suppose good luck to Man United. Are you going to be favourites for that game, Luke?
I don't know what's going to happen in that game. It'd be good to see Pep's reaction if he loses that game, because he's been extra weird.
Yeah, have you ever heard a parable of the two brothers that have to race the horses, and the one that crosses the line second is the one that wins all the money? It's going to be a bit like that game, I think. It's going to be like, who is the shittest? Who will be the shittest of that game? So we'll see. Is it at Old Trafford or is it at the Etihad?
The Etihad.
The Etihad, the fortress that is the Etihad. So we'll see. Big games this weekend. Who have you got, Scott?
We have Brentford at home.
Oh, that's a derby of sorts, isn't it? Tim Lovejoy claims that it's harder to win the league in London because of all the derbies, but I never heard anyone really talk about the Chelsea QPR derby, even though they're like 10 metres away from each other, or whatever it is. They're not derbies.
That's complete and utter nonsense. I mean, some of them develop into them, but they're just not, are they? It'd be a tough one, that, because Brentford are good, but to be fair, though, their away form is absolutely woeful. So the G-Tech, they're pretty good, but away from home, they've been shocking. So they're coming to the bridge, so I'm hopeful that, based on our current form, fancy us making it 5 in a row.
Fair enough. Go on, Luke. Because I want to move on. Yes.
Before we move on.
All right, go on.
I just want to put something to you, a fun fact to you both. The Arsenal don't travel outside of London till end of January now.
Interesting.
Apart from Europe, I suppose.
Apart from the very next game.
Yeah. But Premier League wise, they're all in London based.
Okay. Are you? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this information. Are you suggesting foul play here, Luke? Are you suggesting that Arsenal are being sorted out over Christmas, over these dark winter months with local games? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm just suggesting that if they don't act on these games, what they can travel like 10 miles away. Well, I don't think they deserve to win the league.
They won't win the league. They're not good enough. They're not good enough. They're not playing well enough to win the league, so they won't. Which is a shame, because I think it was theirs this season. But I don't want to just be a twist the knife in Arsenal podcast, and we will leave it there because we've got other things to talk about after this short break that we now have. I think that's how we end this.
Usually.
And we're back. Thank you for that nice messages from all our sponsors there. And if you are interested in sponsoring the podcast, please get in touch with Martin, because he's in charge of all that and I would misquote you. So thank you. Okay, so Luke, I did say in the first half that we didn't want to get too much into the reaction, but we had a chat, didn't we, on Saturday night? And you may have thought at that point I was trying to wind you up after an evening defeat at home to Nottingham Forest.
Oh shit.
And I think you couldn't be further from the truth when I suggest to you that these were dark days indeed for Manchester United. And you said to me that they weren't. But it seems as though those making decisions at Man United may have agreed with myself, because it emerged quite late that night and early in the morning that Dan Ashworth, the man, the adult in the room, the most sought after technical director in the history of the game, someone who we spent ages fucking talking about all summer, has left United. So obviously I'm not going to ask you why, unless you know. I'm not coming to you as Alex Crook at TalkSport, knowing all the gossip or something. But I'm more interested in, Luke, your reaction and how it makes you feel about INEOS.
Yeah, it's not a great look at all, is it, boys? Fucking hell, it's two major cock-ups from INEOS. First one is keeping with Ten Hag, and second one this. I just think it stinks of poorness from a management point of view. I did read up a few things on what's happened.
Okay.
And it doesn't seem like he's left. It seems like he's got in the boot. And I think it's Jim Ratcliffe has not liked him at all
Is it a case of not liking decisions, or is it not liking the cut of his jib? What's going on?
I think he wasn't happy with what was presented to him through a new manager. He was seeing like it was he would just get Dan Ashworth was just going to his old boys and presented a list instead of saying, no, we need to go after this guy. So Ratcliffe was like, well, I don't want to go to interview stage. I want someone. So that's where that Omar Barada came into it, and he kind of chose Ruben. So they've been clashing over this lean way of working at United, where he's made a load of redundancies. Ashworth's been against that from the start. Ashworth wanted to bring in a lot of statisticians to come in to help with it, and Radcliffe was like, "No, you should be the one that's been leading this." So I think it just comes to a head, but which is not great, because basically INEOS have gone in for this guy, paid up some money for him to Newcastle, and now given the boot because and Ashworth was trying to put things together, and they've just not liked what his direction was.
I think thank you for that, Luke. So I think Luke's right, Scott. I think it looks awful. It doesn't help this perception of Manchester United as a whole. Is there an argument perhaps that if it isn't working, it's better to do it now? Because you do get these in the real world, and we're not talking a left winger here that you've signed for 80 million. Is there a case that if a hire isn't working, it's better to cut your losses early rather than wait it out?
I think so. I think there's genuinely, I can see arguments on either side for this, and I do somewhat sympathise with the grief that INEOS and Ratcliffe are going to get for this, because, yeah, like you said, in business, sometimes you make a hire and sometimes they're just not a fit for whatever reason. They might dazzle in the interview. You think, fucking hell, this guy is unreal. And he gets in. And for whatever reason, you're just not that impressed. He doesn't gel with the right people. He just doesn't fit the culture. There's so many things that can go into it. And I think something similar, full enough, happened at the mighty Chelsea, whereby we hired this sort of super team of executives. We had the two guys from Brighton, Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, who are still very much in the driving seat at Chelsea now. And we had Christopher Vivell. who was of the Red Bull group, and he was sort of going to be our multi-club model leader and lead us to the promised land. And within 6 months, he was gone. And again,
Vavell.
Luko took a lot. Yeah, he's now at Man United.
Yes, I thought I just keep hearing names of like endless directors at Man United at the moment.
Yeah, it's endless. And we had the same thing, and we got rid of him. And it doesn't look like we replaced him with anybody either. We just sort of amalgamated his responsibilities to somebody else. So we got rid of him. And while at the time it was like, fucking hell, this guy saw the writing on the wall. It's a shit show there. There's also an argument to say, look, he just wasn't a fit. We put it out, and at the moment, as we speak right now, it's looking all right. So I think, yeah, why waste time on somebody if they're just not doing what you've hired them to do? Or like you said, Luke, if he's bringing options to the table that Jim Ratcliffe doesn't like, and Jim Ratcliffe doesn't exactly have Father Time on his side anymore, he's 70 odd years old. He's only got a finite period of time to do what he's come to Man United to do. He ain't got the time to piss about.
I think he's rich enough to be like Mr. Burns, I think, Scott. He's going to live forever. Don't worry about that. So, okay, right. Well, that's a good view, Scott. Luke, how do you think INEOS have done as a whole? Do you think it's because there was a lot of what I would call the top red type United fan were very much championing INEOS as the person to go to rather than the other potential investment, and I can't remember where that was from now. It was from the Middle East. So whichever Middle Eastern country it was, they championed INEOS, saying that this was the better deal. Do you think it's gone well so far? Feel free to take a drink when you're about to answer a question. That's great. You knew that was coming. It was a long question, but whatever. Go ahead.
We've got a trophy.
Yes.
Can't deny that.
No one could take that away from you. Even Alan Shearer tried on the day. Poor Ten Hag. Even I find that hard to watch, even though. Anyway, sorry, go on. Yes, Luke. Is it a success so far?
No.
What made you decide? Because I could see those wheels turning, Luke. You know, you've got a very strong thinking face. I've always thought that. So the listener can't hear that, can't see that face of pure thought that you put into that answer. So please give us a window into that thought process of where you came to know.
What I'm seeing is the similarities to what's happening over the cycling team. Exactly the same situation where the cycling team are not performing. They've not won a single stage in the Tour last year. They put all the eggs into one rider. That
was that Pidcock? Pidcock.
No, so that's a different issue.
All right, go on. Stick to the issue you were going to tell us. Go on.
So they put all the eggs in one basket and one GC rider. He got injured, but they gave him a contract which was ridiculous, and they had to pay him out on the contract. He's still with them. Pidcock is an uprising star. He's turned around saying, we don't know who the management is, don't know what's going on, and I don't really want to do any tours. I'd rather just do some single mountain biking and.
Yeah, I thought I was a mountain biker. I'm not going to pretend I know about road cycling. But I was when he said he was at INEOS. I was like, was he not a mountain biker?
So he is. He's part of the tour team, but he's just. I think how it's ran and what he said, he's just said it's just a mess, and a lot of people on our team have come out and said it. And they're saying how their training it was state of the art. Now it's kind of dated. And I just see a lot of similarities to the kind of this INEOS model coming over to United, where there's a lot of chiefs, where there's not seemed to be someone taking charge of it. Radcliffe is kind of saying, "Oh, I'm not going to be part of the football decisions," but clearly he is. It's a bit worrying, to be honest, where it's going, because the other football teams, they've not performed. What is it, Nice and was it a team in Switzerland or something like that?
Yeah, that was going to be my point. Is that they've not really pulled up any trees in the football world either, have they? I know absolutely zero about their cycling exploits, but in the football world, it's not exactly gone to plan. I mean, you could say that about the Red Bull group as well. None of their teams really do a great deal, but for a club like Man United, you've got to be back at the top. You've got to be in the upper echelons of the league again. You know, biggest club in the world. But it's time's ticking on that. It's it's been 11 years now with no Premier League, and it doesn't look like it's going to come in the next 11 either.
Yeah, I think on Luke's point as well, the idea that somebody would invest billions of pounds in something and not be involved in key strategic decision making, to me, is just being disingenuous. He's quite clearly going to be involved, or at least influence those decisions. To say anything else, I just think is completely false. But, I'm not saying anything more than that. Also, Luke, just a bit of feedback. I think talking about other sports is fine, just not kids' activities like riding bikes. I think that's, I don't know about Jim Ratcliffe's hopscotch team either, or his fucking Kiss Chase team. Like, just keep it into real sports, Luke, if that's okay moving forward. So if we boxed off INEOS, are we happy? Are we happy that's been done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you two got anything else to say.
Well, I mean, can we offer a fix? We're supposed to offer fixes, it says on Martin's notes. So how can we fix INEOS? Can I present something as an idea, potentially?
Cool. Please do.
I think if it wasn't working, they've probably done the right thing. And whether it probably looks terrible. And especially when you put them next to the redundancies that are being presented for financial reasons, when you consider the huge amount they're going to be paying in severance to Eric Ten Hag and Dan Ashworth, it just pales in comparison. And when you're looking at increasing the ticket prices as well, the justifications for that being that thing, I just think it just doesn't. It just, people aren't that fucking stupid, and I think I understand that they may be making decisions in the best interests of the club, but I think sometimes you get swept up. I think in making things as lean as possible. I don't think that's always the best way to run a business, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I think anything else you gents would put forward as a fix for Man United? Go on, Luke.
I think stick with Ruben. I think whatever happens, just stick with him for this season. I know it's going to be turbulent, but please just don't make any rash decisions that way.
Okay, Scott, anything else you want to add? I concur on all points. I think getting rid of Ashworth, if it wasn't clicking, pull the trigger, Rid, don't mess about. And yeah, do your due diligence better next time, INEOS.
Yeah, I completely agree. They've been great at those strategic decisions so far, so fair play to them. Okay, so moving on to another story. This wasn't in the plan, but, it's too big to really ignore it. And I don't think there's too much to say on this, but I feel like it is worth pointing, because I think there is a bigger thought about what happens next for the FA or PGMOL or whoever would be key strategic decision makers on this. I imagine it's PGMOL, to be honest. They seem to be all anyone fucking talks about these days. Martin loves them, I know. So, David Coote, after a thorough review, I believe, which I think would have taken a few minutes if it was me, has been relieved of his duties as a referee. So, what do we think, boys? I mean, Scott, were we expecting that, do you think?
Yeah, it was a matter of time, really, wasn't it? We were all just waiting for the hammer to drop on him. And I don't think he can have any complaints. I don't think. It was just one big mess of a situation. He's made himself look an idiot. It's just yet another, like you said, the PGMOL. We couldn't even know what it is. It should just be foreign to us. It's just, but now, like you said, it's at the forefront of the news all the time. Admittedly not usually for drug and personal vendetta scandals, but nonetheless they find their way into the news, and he's just made everyone look fucking stupid, hasn't he? And I don't think he can have any complaints about him getting fired. I don't think there's any other outcome that we could have really expected out of this.
Luke, what do you think? I've seen it referred to David Coote as just being an ardent truth teller. Do you think it was? Do you think he's been unfairly treated by the PGMOL and the wider footballing public, if you will?
Kind of, to be honest. I think it had to be done. He had to be fired.
So no, then.
No,
but go on. Go on. I'll let you finish.
He had to be fired because of the public. I came into the public eye, but what he's done is, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, you've got to remember that no one in the public does cocaine. That is a fact of the world. No one ever does it.
And calling Jurgen a cunt, I suppose it's not really a big issue, but because it's coming to the public eye, it's become a massive issue. I just think, well, he could definitely never go to Liverpool, that's for sure.
Well, Martin suggested that they were the worst fan base he could have done it about. Do you agree with that, boys?
Absolutely. Yeah, he couldn't have picked a worse manager to pick on.
Oh, I can think of one other set of fans that I think would be worse. And unfortunately, but I don't want to name them because unfortunately, a certain person isn't here to defend them. But so I'm not naming names. But it was one of the worst ones. I'll certainly concur with that. Do you think the PGMOL can do anything to stop this happening again? Because who's to say? I mean, I know drugs are involved this time, and there's all sorts of scandal coming out of it after the fact. But do you think the PGMOL can put safeguards in? Because let's be honest, people have Christmas parties, they go out for beers with their mates. We all know what we like. We've had a beer. We've heard some of the shit Luke says when he's had a few beers. So, can this happen again? Can we live in a world where people get pissed and say things?
Let's go. We do live in that world. Whether you can do that and keep your job with the PGMOL is probably a different story. And I suspect David Coote is not the first person to have taken an illicit substance and talk shit about someone he doesn't like, or a bad day at the office. But he's probably one of the few who has a very, very public job and allowed himself to be videoed whilst doing so. So I think this is why it's such a you can't really blame anyone but him, because the actions in and of themselves are like, okay, fine, he's having a bit of a complaint about someone that he came across at work. Everybody's done that. But he's videoed himself, explicitly said this can't go out anywhere. So why are you saying it then? Why are you being such a fucking stupid idiot? But yeah, so it's going to happen. Whether it will come out in this public fashion again, I'm sure people who are prone to prone to a bit of a Freudian slip will probably be a bit more careful in future, I suspect.
What about the PGMOL themselves? Do you think they should be looking at doing more kind of education training, or?
Well, they're going to have to, because obviously drugs involved, so they're going to have to be showing that there's going to be a new incentive. Don't do drugs, kids. But drugs are bad and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I was going to say, Keith Hackett tweeted afterwards. He's always good, I think, Keith Hackett, for a bit of 2020 hindsight vision. He's always been very good at that with his caps lock on his Twitter account, the weird guy. But he said that he was very pro referees being drug tested and that this was turned down by the powers that be. Do you think we're getting into sort of pointless territory, or do you think this is the kind of thing the FA PGMOL probably has to look at doing now?
Yeah,
they're probably going to be forced to, aren't they? Yeah. I think as a byproduct of this will probably be that, and it is unnecessary. I think it is a bit ridiculous. Unless he's turned up visibly hungover and can't run around the pitch, then whatever.
So as a fix, then, boys, what do you reckon, Scott? What do you think's to make sure that we don't get another David Coote situation? What do you think we can do to box that off?
My advice to the refereeing circle is choose your friends extremely carefully, because clearly, David Coote, you have awful judgment in who your friends are.
Yeah, fair.
Does anyone know the backstory to it? Is it has the guy, his mate, just released it, or has he's lost his phone and someone's found it? What's does anyone know?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anything of that nature. I haven't looked, really, to be honest. I feel like I didn't really look for the David Coote stuff. It just sort of finds me, because I feel like everyone seemed to believe that it confirmed some kind of long-held conspiracy that they had, rather than just being a bloke off his fucking rocker talking shite, which, you will see anywhere in Bolton on a Saturday night. Luke, anything you want to add in terms of fixes before we wrap up David Coote and the PGMOL?
More drugs.
More drugs. Luke goes the other way.
Put everybody on drugs and it's even.
Yeah. The only thing I would add on David Coote is it's nice to see a man who I think's got worse friends than me. That's that's like less reliable friends than I've got. You can't relax around them type mates like we have. So that was good to see. So I think, boys, we've covered everything in Martin's absence. Do you think he's going to be happy with our day's work?
Well, I think we can task him with finding some clips.
Ah, that's true. Actually, we could do that from about 9:01 tomorrow, and just keep sending it all afternoon.
Yeah.
Clips.
At the end of the day.
I hope Martin will be happy with the episode. I suspect he won't be. You know, I'm sure I/you lot have done something wrong, and that we meant it. More importantly, no matter what we did or did forget to speak about. I know I've not. Unfortunately, I haven't gone through every single pot Martin raised on his pod notes, but again, just to cover, we all agree. Angie's been a little bit stubborn, Martin. We've definitely covered Spurs. Don't worry, I know you like to talk about Spurs for some reason, so they're covered. Okay, boys, that is the end of the episode. So now, Luke, I get to ask this question now. If people want to learn and do a little bit more on our website, how can they find where we are, what our YouTube is, for example? Do we have a website for that, Luke? And if we do, what's it called?
It is thefixingfootballpodcast.com.
Yes, well done. Absolutely. And Scott, what can people do if they're interested in winning a David Beckham shirt?
Well, if you want a beautiful piece of Galactico memorabilia signed by the one and only Golden Balls himself, David Beckham, you can check our X profiles, probably the quickest way. Look at our pinned tweet. You will see all the details there. And the description of this podcast, you'll find all the entry details there as well.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's a great prize to win, even though David Beckham, if we're being completely honest, was an overhyped job. So, there we go. Boys, great having the episode. If you'd like what you heard and you want to hear more, next week we'll be covering Arsenal, and we'll be talking about whether Mikel Arteta is a fraud. So please join us for that if you're really interested in hearing more about that. I'll be keen on it. But anyway, it's been a laugh doing this, guys. Boys, you want to say bye?
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.